Well, welcome everyone to Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game. I'm your host, Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, the 4 key retirement measurements, part 2 of our series on how to create a successful retirement with nationally recognized retirement expert, author, and adjunct professor of the American College, Curtis Cloak. Welcome to segment 2, Curtis.
It's good to be here, Steve.
We're talking about key measurements, and ladies and gentlemen, everything you're seeing here on this screen is proprietary information that you built. You didn't like it. Nobody else's program works. So Curtis, you had to build your own.
Yeah. So actually this, the intent of building the what we call the key quantifiers of retirement risk came because we realized that people were tired of looking at numbers and spreadsheets, and they don't have the capacity to read that material. They're not wowed by the material. In fact, it turns them off. And so we need to create a way of teaching and training our consumer clients that are getting ready to retire, those that are already retired, to help them find the number of quantifying measurements that define safety or not safety. And it's kind of funny, Steve, how this came to be. How this came to be was one day I was flying an airplane. I wasn't flying the airplane. I was in a small single prop airplane that flew from a small airport to Chicago. It's about an hour and 20-minute flight. This was an early April morning, and it's 40-mile-an-hour ground winds, a misty rain, and a low cloud ceiling. Well, it's an open cockpit, and 2 20-year-old young pilots are flying this plane. 20 minutes into the flight, now we're in the sauce in the sky. We can't see out a single window, and the ride is as bad as it was when we took off from the ground. Now, I'm a pretty seasoned flyer, but I'm the only passenger on this plane to Chicago this day, and I'm having a little bit of a hard time holding it all together. Suddenly, some activity in the cockpit took place that I was unimpressed with, and I began to get a little worried about what the pilots were doing in the front of the plane. So I brought my attention to my concern, and they reassured me by pointing to the dashboard, the gauges on their dashboard. And they went on to explain to me the reason that they knew that the plane was just fine despite how it was feeling was because there was sensory on the fuselage and the wings, and based on their instrument rating ability to read the gauges, nothing was running into us, and we weren't running into anything else. We weren't falling out of the sky. Everything was okay. It's just a turbulent ride. And so they said, so be reassured, we know how to read. Everything looks good. Put your seatbelt on, sit back, relax, and have a good flight. Well, at this point in time, there's nothing good about this flight. I land the plane. Later in the afternoon, as I'm attending the meeting, I realize as I'm looking out the window of the building I'm in Chicago, it's raining a little harder, it's getting darker, the wind has not subsided, and it's going to be another ride back to the same location that I came in. And just like that, I realized that's exactly what consumers feel in retirement. They hate the ride, they can't see out the window, and there's probably a dashboard of gauges that we need to teach them how to be instrument rated. And that happens to be these 4 quadrants of key measurements that we talk about.
Now you reduced, there's a lot of measurements, but you came to these final 4, as I would say.
We identified 12 gauges, and we narrowed it to the absolutely core measurements, the least number that a client has to see. And we wanted to show that to them in a dashboard style. We wanted to show it to them in a single picture. But there are 4 parts to this picture. The first one of these quadrants, these key core measurements, is you got to understand if I'm building traditional portfolios and I'm tethering assets to market sensitivity, whether it's fixed income or whether it's equity-based, you need to understand that based on historical research and modeling, that what used to be thought as a 4% rule got annihilated because the bridge got moved, the river got moved underneath the bridge, and now we need to realize that because people are living longer and measurements have changed, the 4% rule is dead. It's now a 3% withdrawal rule. And there's arguments by many academics that argue it's less than 3%. But the first thing we need to be able to do, whatever withdrawal rate we adhere to in our principles and our disciplines, we need to see what's happening based on my resources and the effects of projected inflation, projected taxes, based on projected longevity dates of not just the first spouse, but the surviving spouse of the 2 of spouses that are living. What's happening to my withdrawal rate over time? And so this is going to measure withdrawal rates as I go through life based on all those specs that we set in our expectations. The second measurement is the one over here on the bottom left. So that purple line, let's pretend for a minute, it represents 100% of our lifestyle floor that we need after taxes have been considered, inflation's been considered, and this would maybe be everything. We would put everything in there. The question is, how much of the income that we're getting is coming from guaranteed reliable sources? Pension, Social Security would meet that line. And so how much of our income do we not want tethered to market risk, and how much income would we like to be safe? So we're going to measure that the entire time. Now, this third picture, this third quadrant, is what we're going to call discretionary liquidity. Now, these are dollars that are not required to be held hostage to finance our reliability of income. Based on these withdrawal rates, these are dollars that if I took them off the table and took the kids to Disney World, or bought the motorhome, the second place, or traveled around the world, taking those dollars off the table would not make my withdrawal rates any worse than it is, would not harm my reliability of income. And so I need to know, is there an amount of money that gives me the discretion, and at what point, early retirement, middle retirement, late retirement, of having real liquidity that I won't harm my retirement plan? And fourth and finally, what's happening to my net worth? Do I care about this? And if I do, we're measuring it for you. What happens if I'm at risk of running out? So we're measuring these key measurements, and we're teaching you how to read these gauges just like those pilots did that day.
Well, Curtis, net worth. People in retirement now, we're kind of changing. We used to be so asset-driven. Now we're kind of income-driven. Is net worth still on the table as a major concern for clients?
Well, understand that this chart that we're showing you here right now assumes average returns of a mix of portfolio, and we're testing things on a linear basis. So we're not testing it based on variability and volatility in the market. We don't want to get too excited about what we see in net worth until we say, what if I have to go that far in retirement based on how long I think I might live, and now I vary markets over time? Now we got to see, do I have enough variance in a linear calculation once I stress test it based on market variances to actually not run out of money once I test it in the back test?
Well, give me this real baseline of your core measurements here. Just give me what's going on.
Yeah. So this happens to be a real case, a real set of a husband and wife that came in. And what we asked them to do, we had a series of questions. We put them through the process. We identify what their resources are, what their income sources are, what their Social Security options are, what their pension options are. And we plug all the data into our software. And this tells us, we start out here retirement probably below 2% withdrawal rate. And over time, we get up to 5%, and we're clear up over 20% withdrawal rate. Now, this isn't necessarily insidious because it's okay to get higher in my last trifecta of retirement, but this raises some concern. I get over here, the purple line represents what my total lifestyle income needs are going to be over time, and the red line shows as inflation begins to erode my spending ability, that I'm getting less and less income as time goes on and inflation erodes it. But here's the real problem. When he passes away and his life-only pension and she gets less Social Security now, look what happens to the dependence of the market and why this withdrawal rate spikes up here. We've got a woman's issue going on here for most women in America. And then finally, we have no discretionary liquidity over time. You can see before we stress test it, we're already consuming our dollars, right?
Now, you saw this. Then you came with an antidote. You came with a prescription.
So now we're going to do all the things that we do, which are a basket of products approach. We're agnostic to math and science. And once we apply our intellect, you can see we took their 61% average reliability to almost 91%. We took their average withdrawal rates from 585 below the 3% guidance mark for dollars tethered to markets of 127, where we had no liquidity out here at all. We have all kinds of liquidity, and we didn't sacrifice performance to accomplish all those goals. We had significantly greater dollars on the table.
Without planning, this is not going to happen.
Without planning, this is not going to happen. And this is not what traditional advisors are doing. Many of them are doing what they used to do 40, 50 years ago. This is the new generation of retirement planning.
The big thing I just got out of this segment was that the survivor of the marriage, 87% of the time, mother, is now being taken care of. Look at the gap between what she came to the table with and what she would have had to live on versus what you did for her by just moving assets into their proper place.
Protecting that surviving spouse after the first death, it's really important.
Well, don't forget to watch our next segment, the Top Retirement Strategies, part 3 of our series on how to create a successful retirement. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always check with your tax consultant, legal counsel, or financial advisor. You've been watching Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game.